My name is Gloria. I'm 57 years old, and I never thought the daughter I raised for 22 years would look at me like I was nothing, especially not in front of all those people at Giovanni's that night. I'd given her everything. Every shift I worked, every sacrifice I made, it was all for her. But sitting alone in that restaurant, holding a $3,500 bill for a dinner I wasn't even allowed to eat, I realized that sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes the people we save end up being the ones who hurt us the most. If you've ever given everything to someone you love, you'll understand what happened next. Let me know where you're watching from, and please hit that subscribe button, because what my daughter did that night at Giovanni's changed everything between us forever. I need to take you back to understand how we got here, back to when my life was simple, predictable, and honestly, a little lonely. I was working as a nurse at the county hospital in Baltimore, living in a small 2-bedroom apartment that felt too big for just me. My husband had died in a car accident 10 years before any of this started. We never had children together, and after he passed, I threw myself into work. It was easier than going home to an empty apartment every night. The hospital became my life. I knew every hallway, every patient room, every corner of that building better than I knew my own neighborhood. I worked the day shift mostly, sometimes picking up extra hours when they needed me. The money was decent enough to pay my bills and put a little away each month. I drove an old Honda Civic that had seen better days, but it got me where I needed to go. My winter coat was probably 8 years old at that point, but it still kept me warm. I didn't need much, just my work, my small circle of colleagues, and the quiet routine of my days. But there was this emptiness, this feeling that I was supposed to be taking care of someone, loving someone, building a life with someone. I'd always wanted to be a mother. When my husband was alive, we'd talked about adoption, but then he died, and I put those dreams away, until the day they brought Amber into the emergency room. She was 3 years old, tiny, malnourished. Her mother had been arrested for drug possession and child neglect. The little girl was dehydrated, underweight, and terrified. I was assigned to her care during her hospital stay. From the first moment I saw her, something in my heart shifted. She had these big brown eyes that looked at me with such fear and confusion. When I sat beside her bed and held her hand, she gripped my fingers so tightly, like I was the only solid thing in her world. I spent every moment of my shifts with her, fed her, read her stories, sang her to sleep when she had nightmares. Even on my days off, I came back to visit her. The social workers were trying to find placement for her. Her mother's rights were being terminated. Amber had no other family. She'd end up in foster care, bouncing from home to home, never really belonging anywhere. I couldn't let that happen. I started the adoption process immediately. It took 18 months of paperwork, home visits, background checks, and court appearances. But the day I brought Amber home to my apartment, officially, my daughter was the happiest day of my life since my husband died. She was 4.5 by then, still small for her age, still shy and withdrawn, but she was mine and I was hers. The next 22 years were the hardest and most beautiful years of my life. I worked double shifts constantly. Amber needed so much, not just food and clothes, but opportunities. She was smart, so smart and talented. She wanted to take piano lessons, so I picked up extra weekend shifts to pay for them. She wanted to try ballet, so I skipped buying myself new clothes that year. When she was 10, she needed braces. I took out a small loan and worked night shifts for 6 months to pay it off. My car stayed the same. That 15-year-old Honda kept running, somehow held together by prayers and cheap oil changes. I wore the same winter coat year after year, the same work shoes until they had holes in the soles. I ate simple meals, often just rice and beans or pasta, so Amber could have fresh vegetables and good protein. I never took vacations. Never bought anything for myself that wasn't absolutely necessary, but Amber thrived. She was beautiful inside and out, or at least I thought she was. She excelled in school, got straight A's, won awards. She had friends, went to sleepovers, had birthday parties. I made sure she had everything I never had growing up. Every opportunity, every chance to become something more. When she graduated high school, she got a full scholarship to Northwestern University in Chicago. I was so proud I cried for a week. My daughter going to one of the best schools in the country. She was going to study marketing, she said. She wanted to work for a big advertising agency someday. Those 4 years of college, we talked every week. She'd call me on Sunday evenings and tell me about her classes, her roommates, her internships. She came home for Christmas and spring break. We'd spend hours catching up baking cookies together, like we did when she was little, watching our favourite old movies. After graduation, she got a job at a prestigious advertising firm in Chicago. I was thrilled for her. She was making good money living in a nice apartment with roommates, building the life I'd always dreamed she'd have. She was my greatest achievement. Everything I'd sacrificed for every extra shift I'd worked, every meal I'd skipped, it all felt worth it. When I saw how successful and happy she was, our relationship was good, close, or so I thought. She still called every week, still came home once a month to visit. We'd go out to lunch at her favourite diner, walk around the old neighbourhood, talk about her job and her plans for the future. She'd always hug me tight when she left and say, "I love you, Mum. Thank you for everything." I believed her. I had no reason not to. She was the centre of my world, the reason I got up every morning, the purpose behind every decision I'd made for over 2 decades. Everything seemed perfect, until Preston entered her life. The first time Amber mentioned Preston, I heard something different in her voice. It was about 6 months ago. She called me on a Tuesday evening instead of our usual Sunday time. Her voice was bright, excited, but there was something else there too. Something I couldn't quite identify. "Mum, I met someone," she said, and I could hear her smiling through the phone. "That's wonderful, honey," I replied. "Tell me about him." "His name is Preston Whitmore. He's 32, works as a financial director for an investment firm. Mum, he's amazing. So smart, so successful." She went on about him for 20 minutes. How they'd met at a company networking event, how he'd asked her out for dinner at this incredible restaurant, how he had season tickets to the symphony, how his family was, as she put it, very established in Chicago. That word, established, it caught in my mind. There was emphasis on it, like it meant something more than she was saying. "I'm so happy for you," I told her. "I can't wait to meet him." There was a pause, just a brief hesitation. "Yeah, definitely. Soon." But soon never came. Over the next few months, Amber's calls became less frequent. Instead of every week, it was every 2 weeks. Then, every 3. When she did call, she seemed distracted, rushed. She'd mention Preston constantly, but always in this new way. Talking about the expensive restaurants they went to, the galas, and charity events they attended, the weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard and the Hamptons. "You sound busy," I said during one call. "Happy busy, I hope." "Oh, absolutely," she replied. "Preston and I have so many events to attend. His family knows everyone. It's a whole different world, Mum. A whole different world." Another phrase that stuck with me. Thanksgiving came. Amber had always come home for Thanksgiving. It was our tradition. We'd cook together, watch the parade, eat too much pie. But that year, she called me 3 days before. "Mum, I'm so sorry, but I can't make it home this year." My heart sank. "Oh, is everything okay?" "Everything's great. It's just that Preston's family invited us to their estate in Connecticut for the holiday. It's a huge thing. His whole extended family will be there. I can't really say no." "I understand," I said, even though I didn't. Even though I'd already bought the turkey and all her favourite ingredients for stuffing. "You're not upset, are you?" she asked. "No, honey, of course not. You go have fun with Preston's family." After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen looking at that turkey in the refrigerator and cried. It was the first Thanksgiving in 21 years that I'd spend alone. But I told myself it was fine. She was building her own life. That's what I'd raised her to do. be independent, make her own choices, find her own happiness. Then I started noticing her social media. I didn't use it much myself, but I had an account just to keep up with Amber's life. She posted all the time now, pictures of herself and Preston at fancy restaurants, at art gallery openings, on a boat somewhere, at a polo match of all things. She looked beautiful in every photo, dressed in clothes I'd never seen before, expensive designer outfits. And there were photos with Preston's family, his parents in front of their massive house, his sister at some charity luncheon, group shots at country clubs and wine tastings. The comments on these posts were always the same, her friends writing things like, "You're living the dream," and "so glamorous," and "you're so lucky to have such an amazing family." That last one bothered me most. Amber would respond with a simple, "I'm blessed," or a heart emoji, never a correction, never a, "Well, my real family is back in Baltimore." Just acceptance of this narrative that Preston's family was her family now. I looked through all her recent posts one night, scrolling back through months of photos. Not a single picture of me, not one mention of her childhood, her past, where she came from. It was like those 22 years we'd spent together had been erased, like I'd been erased. And I tried calling her. She didn't answer. I sent a text. "Hi, honey, just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a while. Love you," she replied 6 hours later. "Sorry, Mum, crazy busy. We'll call you later." Later never came. Christmas approached. I decorated my little apartment like I always did. Put up our tree, hung the stockings, bought all the ingredients for the cookies we made together every year. I waited for her to tell me when she was coming home. 3 days before Christmas, my phone rang. It was Amber. "Mum, hi. Listen, I have some bad news." My stomach dropped. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. It's just that Preston surprised me with a trip. We're going to Aspen for Christmas, skiing with some of his college friends. I know I said I'd come home, but this was already booked and paid for, and I can't really." "It's okay," I interrupted, because I couldn't listen to more excuses. "You go. Have a wonderful time. You're not mad." "No, sweetheart. I want you to enjoy yourself." "Thanks, Mum. You're the best. I'll make it up to you, I promise." After we hung up, I walked over to the tree I'd decorated, all those ornaments we'd collected over the years, the handmade ones from when she was little, the special ones we'd bought to commemorate different milestones. I stood there looking at them and felt something break inside my chest. I spent Christmas alone, ate the ham I'd cooked by myself, watched old movies, tried not to think about Amber on a ski slope in Aspen, laughing with Preston and his wealthy friends, probably not thinking about me at all. In February, I decided I needed to see her. I couldn't keep going like this, wondering if I'd done something wrong, if she was pulling away from me for some reason I didn't understand. I called her and told her I was coming to Chicago. She sounded surprised. "Oh, when?" "Next Saturday. I can drive up, take you to lunch. We can catch up." There was a long pause. "Okay, sure. But I only have about 30 minutes, Mum. I have plans with Preston that afternoon." 30 minutes. After months of barely hearing from her, she could spare 30 minutes. I made the drive. 4 hours from Baltimore to Chicago. I'd made it dozens of times over the years, but this time felt different. Heavier somehow. We met at a coffee shop near her apartment. When I walked in and saw her, my breath caught. She looked so different. Her hair was styled in a way I'd never seen before. Sleek and expensive looking. She wore a cream-coloured pantsuit that probably cost more than I made in a month. Designer sunglasses pushed up on her head. A handbag I recognised from magazine ads, the kind with a waiting list. "Hi, Mum," she said, giving me a quick hug. It felt stiff, obligatory. We sat down. I'd worn my nicest outfit, a simple dress and cardigan, but next to her, I felt shabby. I watched her eyes take in my clothes, my worn purse, my practical shoes. Something flickered across her face. Was it embarrassment? "You look wonderful," I told her, "so sophisticated." "Thanks. Preston likes me to look put together for events." We made small talk. She checked her phone 3 times in the first 10 minutes. I asked about work. She answered in vague terms, clearly distracted. I tried to tell her about a patient at the hospital, a sweet story about a little boy who'd drawn me a picture, but she cut me off mid-sentence. "Mum, that's nice, but I really need to go soon. Preston's picking me up." I swallowed my hurt. "Of course. I just missed you. We haven't talked much lately." "I know. I'm sorry. Things have just been so busy." As we stood to leave, she looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "You know, Mum, maybe you should think about updating your wardrobe a little. First impressions matter." The words hit me like a slap. I stood there in the coffee shop, watching my daughter. The girl I'd raised telling me I wasn't dressed well enough. For what? For her new life. "I'll keep that in mind," I managed to say. She kissed my cheek, another quick, impersonal gesture, and walked out to where a sleek black car was waiting. Preston in the driver's seat. She didn't introduce us, just got in and drove away. I sat in my old Honda in the parking lot and cried for 20 minutes before starting the long drive home. 2 weeks later, she called. Her voice was cheerful, almost artificially so. "Mum, guess what? Preston got promoted to Senior Financial Director. We're having a celebration dinner this Saturday at Giovanni's. You should come." Giovanni's. I'd heard of it. Michelin-starred Italian restaurant, reservations months in advance. The kind of place I'd never been to in my life. "Really? You want me there?" I couldn't keep the hope out of my voice. "Of course, it'll be fun. 7 o'clock Saturday." "I'll be there," I said immediately. After we hung up, I felt lighter than I had in months. She wanted me there. She wanted to include me in this important moment. Maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe she wasn't pulling away. Maybe she just needed time to adjust to her new life, and now she was ready to bring me into it. I requested the weekend off from work, went to the mall and bought a new dress. Nothing fancy, I couldn't afford fancy, but it was new and clean and appropriate. I practiced what I'd say to Preston, prepared compliments and questions. I wanted to make a good impression on the man my daughter loved. I booked a cheap hotel room near the restaurant, bought flowers for Amber, and a nice bottle of wine for Preston to congratulate him on his promotion. Packed my overnight bag carefully. The drive to Chicago that Saturday felt different, hopeful. I listened to music and thought about how nice it would be to spend an evening with Amber, to meet Preston properly, to be part of her life again. I arrived at Giovanni's at exactly 7 o'clock. The restaurant was beautiful. Soft lighting, white tablecloths, well-dressed people everywhere. A host in a suit greeted me at the door. "I'm here for the Whitmore party," I said. He checked his list. "Right this way." He led me through the restaurant to a large table near the windows. The view overlooked the Chicago River, the city lights reflecting on the water. 8 people sat around the table. Amber in a stunning black dress. Preston in an expensive suit. 3 other couples I didn't recognize, all of them looking like they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. They were laughing, glasses of champagne in their hands. Amber saw me approaching and her face changed. The smile vanished, her eyes widened, and not with happiness, with something else. Displeasure, panic. "Mum," she said, standing up quickly. "You're here," not "I'm so glad you're here," or "I've been waiting for you." Just, "You're here." A statement of fact delivered with tension. "Hi, honey." I held out the flowers and wine. "Congratulations, Preston." Preston stood, shook my hand briefly. His grip was limp, his smile forced. "Thank you. That's very kind." Amber took the gifts and set them on the edge of the table without looking at them. She didn't introduce me to anyone. The other guests stared at me with curiosity, evaluating me from head to toe. I felt exposed, judged. "Should I sit down?" I asked, gesturing to an empty chair at the table. Amber's face flushed. She glanced at Preston, then at her friends. "Actually, Mum, this table is reserved for Preston's colleagues who are joining us soon." I blinked, confused. "I thought you invited me to dinner." "I did." Her voice was cool, distant. "But this table is for important people. You know, business associates, investors, people Preston needs to network with. Important people. The words hung in the air between us. I heard what she didn't say. You're not important. You don't belong here. One of the women at the table, a blonde in a silver dress, smirked. Another man whispered something to his date, and they both laughed quietly. Oh, I said softly. I see. I can find another table then. Amber's expression hardened. Actually, there's a diner 2 blocks down. Might be more your style. More laughter from the table. Quiet, but unmistakable. They were enjoying this. Enjoying watching her dismiss me. My hands were shaking. I gripped my purse tighter. Amber, I drove 4 hours. And that was sweet mum. But this is an important night for Preston and me. You understand. I didn't understand. I didn't understand any of this. This wasn't my daughter. This wasn't the girl I'd raised. The girl who used to fall asleep in my lap, who'd held my hand on her first day of school, who'd cried in my arms when she didn't make the dance team in 8th grade. I turned to leave, willing myself not to cry in front of these strangers. But before I could take a step, a waiter appeared at my elbow. Excuse me, Mom. I turned. He held out a black leather folder. Your daughter said you'll be taking care of the bill. I opened the folder with trembling hands. The number at the bottom made my vision blur. $3,500. I stared at it, unable to process what I was seeing. Bottles of Dom Perignon champagne, $400 each. Wagyu beefsteaks, lobster tail, truffle pasta, wine that cost more than my monthly rent. Amber, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. There must be a mistake. She turned to look at me, her face a mask of false innocence. Oh, Mum, you said you wanted to celebrate Preston's promotion. Remember, I thought you'd want to treat us. You always said you'd do anything for me. Anything for me. Those words I'd said 1,000 times now, twisted into a weapon. The guests at the table weren't even trying to hide their amusement anymore. One man said loudly, "Wow, free dinner, thanks." He paused deliberately. What's your name again? They all laughed. Amber laughed with them. I stood there holding that bill, feeling every eye in the restaurant on me. The waiter waited, tapping his pen against his notepad. I opened my purse. I knew before I looked that I didn't have $3,500. I had maybe $200 in my checking account. My credit card was nearly maxed out from buying the new dress and the hotel room. My daughter sat there watching me struggle, her face cold, unmoved. The girl I'd worked double shifts for, the girl I'd sacrificed everything for. She was watching me drown and doing nothing. I felt something die inside my chest. Some last bit of hope that maybe I'd misunderstood, maybe there was an explanation. Maybe she still loved me. The waiter cleared his throat impatiently. Mom, we need to settle this now. I looked at Amber one more time. She was sipping her champagne, talking to the woman next to her, completely ignoring my distress. I was about to do something, pull out my credit card and hope it didn't get declined, call my bank, I don't know what. I just knew I was trapped, humiliated, alone in a restaurant full of strangers, abandoned by the one person I'd given my whole life to. And then I heard a voice behind me. I don't think that bill belongs to this lady. I turned around. Standing there was a man I hadn't seen in 15 years, but I recognized him immediately. Marco Giovanni, older now, his hair greyer, but the same kind eyes I remembered from those long nights in the hospital ICU. Mr. Giovanni. My voice came out as barely a whisper. He smiled at me, warm and genuine. Hello, Gloria. It's been a long time. Around us, the restaurant had gone quiet. People were watching, sensing something important was happening. Amber and her friends had stopped laughing. The waiter stepped back, uncertain. You two know each other? Amber asked, her voice tight. Marco turned his attention to her, and I saw his expression change. The warmth disappeared, replaced by something cold and assessing. I'm Marco Giovanni. I own this restaurant. Preston stood up quickly, putting on his professional voice. Mr. Giovanni, it's an honor. I've heard wonderful things about your establishment. Marco ignored him. He kept his eyes on Amber. Did I hear correctly that you asked this lady to pay for your dinner? Amber's face flushed. She glanced at her friends, then back at Marco. She's my... She paused, and I watched her struggle with the word. She offered to pay. Didn't you, Mum? The word mum sounded wrong coming from her mouth now, like a formality, an obligation. Marco's expression hardened further. This lady you're treating so poorly, she saved my son's life. The silence in the restaurant deepened. I could feel dozens of eyes on us now. What? Amber said weakly. Marco looked at me, and I saw gratitude and respect in his eyes. The same look he'd given me 15 years ago when his son finally opened his eyes after 3 months in a coma. 15 years ago, Marco said, his voice carrying through the quiet restaurant. My son Antonio was in a motorcycle accident. He was 18 years old. The doctors said he might not make it through the first night, but he did. And then they said he might never wake up. But he did that too. He turned back to Amber. Do you know why he survived? Because of this woman right here. Gloria was his nurse. She stayed by his bedside every single night. When I had to leave to run my restaurants, she was there. She talked to him, read to him, played music for him. She advocated for him with the doctors when they wanted to give up. She never gave up. I felt tears building behind my eyes. I'd never expected to see Marco again. Never expected him to remember what I'd done. It was just my job, just what any good nurse would do. When Antonio finally woke up, Marco continued, the first person he saw was Gloria, the first voice he heard. She'd been there every single day for 3 months, and when he was released from the hospital, I told her that I owed her everything. That if she ever needed anything at all, she only had to ask. He looked at me again. You never asked. Not once. I've thought about you over the years. Wondered how you were. Hoped you were being treated with the kindness and respect you deserve. Then he turned back to Amber, and his voice became cold. And now I find you here in my restaurant treating her like garbage, making her pay for your excessive dinner. Laughing at her with your friends, this woman who gave you everything, who raised you, who loved you. Amber opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Preston sat down heavily, his face pale. Their friends wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. How did you... Amber finally managed. How did you know she raised me? Because 15 years ago, she talked about you constantly, Marco said. Her daughter Amber, her pride and joy. She'd show me pictures of you on her phone, tell me about your piano recitals and your good grades. She'd work 12-hour shifts at the hospital and then go home to take care of you. She was exhausted, always exhausted, but her face would light up whenever she mentioned your name. I had forgotten about that. About the nights I'd sat beside Antonio's hospital bed, talking to Marco when he'd visit, showing him photos of Amber because she was the only good thing in my life I wanted to talk about. Something in Amber's expression shifted. Was it shame? Regret? I couldn't tell anymore. I didn't know this person sitting at the table. Marco gestured to the waiter. This bill, it belongs to these people who ordered this meal, not to Gloria. But I found my voice then. Because this wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about everything that had built up over the past 6 months. Everything I'd swallowed down and accepted and forgiven. Thank you, Mr. Giovanni, I said quietly. But I need to say something first. I turned to Amber. My hands had stopped shaking. Something had settled inside me. A clarity I hadn't felt since I walked into this restaurant. Amber, I spent 22 years raising you. From the moment they brought you into that hospital, so small and scared, I loved you. I chose you, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. My voice grew stronger. I worked double shifts so you could take piano lessons. I drove that same old car for 15 years so you could have a reliable car to drive to college. I wore the same winter coat for 10 years so you could have a new wardrobe every season. I saw her flinch, but I kept going. I skipped meals so you could eat organic food. I never went on vacations so you could go on school trips. I gave up everything, every comfort, every luxury, every small pleasure so you could have opportunities I never had. Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't wipe them away. I never asked you to pay me back. I never expected anything except basic human decency. Respect, maybe even love, though I'm starting to think that was too much to hope for. Preston tried to interrupt. Mum, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No, I said sharply. There's no misunderstanding. Your girlfriend, the woman you think you know, she invited me here tonight to humiliate me, to show me that I don't belong in her new life, that I'm not good enough for her anymore. I looked at Amber's friends. And all of you laughed. You thought it was funny to watch someone be treated this way. You sat there drinking expensive champagne and eating expensive food and laughing at a woman who worked her entire life so her daughter could have a chance. I turned back to Amber. You looked at me like I was nothing. You called me Mum like it was a burden. You told me to find a diner because this table is for important people. My voice broke. I thought I raised you better than this. I thought I taught you that kindness matters, that where you come from doesn't matter as much as who you are. But I was wrong. Or maybe you were just a better actress than I knew. Amber was crying now too, but I couldn't stop. You want to know what hurts the most. It's not the money. It's not even the way you treated me tonight. It's that you've been erasing me from your life for months, pretending I don't exist, posting pictures of Preston's family like they're your family, never mentioning the woman who gave up everything so you could be sitting here in that expensive dress with those expensive friends. I took a breath. I hope Preston and his money make you happy, Amber. I really do. Because you just lost the one person who loved you unconditionally, the one person who would have done anything for you, who did do everything for you. I set the bill down on the table in front of her. This isn't my bill. I wasn't invited to this dinner. I was invited to be humiliated, and I won't participate in that anymore. I looked at her one last time. I'm done. I'm done sacrificing for someone who sees me as an embarrassment. I'm done hoping you'll remember where you came from and who helped you get where you are. I'm done being your dirty little secret. Then I turned to Marco. Thank you for standing up for me. Your son was lucky to have you as a father. I wish I'd been as lucky. I walked toward the door, my head high, even though my heart was shattered into 1,000 pieces. Behind me, I heard Marco say to the waiter, they'll be paying their own bill, and then I'd like them to leave. This restaurant is for people who understand respect and dignity. They clearly don't belong here. I made it outside before the tears really came. I stood on the sidewalk in the cool Chicago night, shaking, gasping for air. People walked past me, probably thinking I was drunk or crazy. I didn't care. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could feel was this enormous pain in my chest, like someone had reached in and torn out my heart. Gloria, wait! I turned. Marco was there holding a to-go bag and a cup of tea. Please, he said gently, come inside, not to that table, to my office. Let me give you a quiet place to sit. I shook my head. I just want to go home. I understand, but at least take this. He handed me the tea. It's chamomile, and there's some food in here. Proper food, not that overpriced nonsense they were eating. I took them because I didn't have the energy to argue. Thank you. Gloria, he said, his voice serious. What you did for Antonio, I meant what I said. You saved his life. You gave me my son back. I'll never forget that. You don't owe me anything, I whispered. I was just doing my job. No, he said firmly. You went beyond your job. You cared for him like he was your own son, the same way you cared for that girl in there who doesn't deserve you. Fresh tears spilled down my cheeks. I don't know what I did wrong. I don't know where I failed her. You didn't fail anyone, Marco said. Some people, they get a taste of wealth and status, and they forget who they are. They forget the people who helped them. That's not your failure. That's theirs. He pulled out a business card and pressed it into my hand. This is my personal number. If you ever need anything, you call me. A job reference, a loan, a place to stay, anything. I mean it. I nodded, unable to speak. And Gloria, what you did in there, standing up for yourself, that took more courage than most people have. Be proud of that. I drove back to my hotel room in a daze. Once inside, I collapsed on the bed and cried until I couldn't cry anymore. I cried for the daughter I thought I had, for the relationship I thought we'd built, for 22 years of love that apparently meant nothing. My phone buzzed constantly. Text messages from Amber, 15, 20, 30 messages. I couldn't bring myself to read them. I turned my phone off and stared at the ceiling until dawn. The next morning, I drove back to Baltimore. 4 hours of highway alone with my thoughts. I kept replaying the night in my head, the look on Amber's face when she told me to find another table, the laughter of her friends, the $3,500 bill, the moment I finally stood up for myself. That last part at least gave me a small spark of something, not quite pride, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. When I got home to my apartment, I finally turned on my phone. 52 messages from Amber. I scrolled through them quickly. Mum, I'm so sorry. Please call me back. I don't know what came over me. Preston's upset with me. His friends think I'm terrible. Please, Mum. But nowhere in those messages did I see real understanding, real remorse. Just panic that she'd been publicly shamed, worry about what Preston and his friends thought of her, concern for her own reputation. Not one message that said, I'm sorry for making you feel worthless. Not one that said, I'm sorry for erasing you from my life. Not one that acknowledged the 22 years of love and sacrifice I'd given her. I put my phone down and looked around my small apartment, the same apartment I'd lived in for 30 years. The same old furniture, the same worn carpet, nothing fancy, nothing impressive, but it was mine, and it was honest. For the first time in 6 months, I felt like I could breathe. The first week after Giovanni's was the hardest. I went to work, came home, went to bed. My colleagues asked if I was okay. I told them I had a cold. It was easier than explaining that my daughter had broken my heart. I kept my phone on silent. Amber called every day, sometimes twice a day. I never answered. Her messages got more desperate. Mum, please, I need to talk to you. I made a mistake. Can we meet somewhere? But I wasn't ready. I didn't know if I'd ever be ready. At night, I'd lie awake thinking about everything, wondering if I'd been too strict or not strict enough, if I'd spoiled her or failed to prepare her for the real world. If I'd done something, anything that made her think it was okay to treat people the way she'd treated me. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized Marco was right. I hadn't failed. I'd loved her. I'd taught her right from wrong. I'd modelled kindness and respect and hard work. Whatever choices she'd made, whatever person she'd become, that was on her, not on me. 2 weeks after the incident, I was coming out of the grocery store when I ran into Linda Chen, a nurse I used to work with who'd transferred to a different hospital 5 years ago. We'd been close once, but we'd lost touch. Gloria, she said, her face lighting up. I haven't seen you in forever. How are you? Something about her genuine warmth, the way she looked at me like I mattered, made me start crying right there in the parking lot. She took me to a coffee shop, and I told her everything. The whole story from the day I adopted Amber to the night at Giovanni's. She listened without interrupting, her hand on mine the whole time. When I finished, she said, Gloria, you gave that girl everything. Now it's time to give yourself something. I don't understand. You've spent 22 years living for someone else. Being a mother, that's beautiful. But who are you without that? What do you want? What do you need? I realised I had no idea. I'd been Amber's mum for so long I didn't know who Gloria was anymore. Linda and I started meeting every week after that. She dragged me to a yoga class, introduced me to her book club, got me to try painting at a local community centre. Little things, simple things, but they were for me, just me. I joined a support group for parents dealing with estrangement from adult children. I'd never thought of it that way, estrangement, but that's what it was. Sitting in that circle of other mothers and fathers who'd lost their children to addiction, to mental illness, to bad marriages, to simple cruelty, I felt less alone. One woman about my age said something that stuck with me. You can't control how they turn out. You can only control how you love them. And sometimes loving them means loving yourself enough to walk away. I started therapy. Something I should have done years ago, but never had time or money for. My therapist helped me see patterns I'd missed, how I'd poured everything into Amber because I was afraid of being alone, how I'd made her my entire identity because I didn't think I had value on my own. You're a person, Gloria, my therapist said during one session. Not just a mother. You have worth beyond what you can give to other people. It was a revelation, a painful one, but necessary. 3 months passed. Spring came to Baltimore. I planted flowers on my small balcony, something I'd never done before. Because I was always too busy working, I started taking walks in the evening instead of collapsing in front of the TV. I bought myself a new coat, a bright blue one that made me smile when I wore it. I was learning to be alone without being lonely. It was hard. Some days I missed Amber so much it physically hurt, but I was learning. One Saturday morning I found a letter in my mailbox. Not an email. Not a text, an actual handwritten letter from Amber. I sat on my couch holding it for a long time before I opened it. The handwriting was Amber's familiar from years of helping her with homework and reading her notes. Dear Mum, it began. I know you don't want to hear from me. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need to tell you some things even if you never respond. Preston and I broke up. His family never really accepted me because I wasn't one of them. They found out about my background, about being adopted, about you being a nurse instead of a doctor or lawyer. They made it clear I wasn't good enough for their son. The irony isn't lost on me. I spent months trying to be good enough for them, hiding where I came from, hiding you, and in the end, it didn't matter. They looked at me the way I looked at you that night at Giovanni's, and it felt exactly as terrible as you must have felt. I don't expect you to feel sorry for me. I made my choices. I hurt the one person who actually loved me for who I am not, for what I could offer them. Mum, I don't have an excuse for what I did. I got caught up in Preston's world. The money, the status, the glamorous life. I wanted so badly to fit in, to be someone important, that I forgot I already was important. To you, I forgot that being a nurse isn't something to be ashamed of. It's something to be proud of. You save lives. You help people. You matter. I forgot that coming from nothing and building a life through hard work and sacrifice is more impressive than being born into wealth. I forgot that the woman who worked 3 jobs so I could take piano lessons is worth more than anyone at that table that night. I forgot everything you taught me, and I'm so sorry. I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I'm just asking you to know that I finally understand. I understand what I had, what I threw away, who you are and what you did for me. I got the life I thought I wanted, and it was empty. Because it wasn't built on anything real. It was all surface, all show, and when it fell apart, there was nothing underneath. You built your life on something real, on love and kindness and integrity. That's why you're still standing, still strong, even after I tried to break you. I hope someday you can forgive me, but if you can't, I understand. Just know that I'm sorry and that I love you. I always have, even when I was too stupid and selfish to show it. Your daughter, Amber. I read the letter 3 times, cried through all 3 readings. It was a good letter, a sincere letter, better than the desperate text messages had been. But I didn't know if it was enough. Words were easy, change was hard, and I'd learned the hard way that loving someone didn't mean letting them hurt you. I folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd respond. Maybe someday we'd rebuild something, but not now, not yet. Now I needed to keep building my own life, learning who Gloria was when she wasn't defined by being someone's mother. 6 months have passed since that night at Giovanni's. 6 months of therapy, self-discovery, new friendships, and slowly, carefully learning to be okay with being alone. I still work at the county hospital, still drive my old Honda, though I've been saving up for a newer one, still live in my small apartment. But it feels different now. Less like a way station waiting for Amber to visit, more like home, my home. Linda and I take weekend trips sometimes, nothing fancy, just drives to the beach or the mountains, museums, bookstores, the simple pleasures I never let myself have before. I started volunteering at a literacy program teaching adults to read. It gives me purpose, reminds me that there are people who need help and appreciate it. Last month, Amber sent another letter, and then she started showing up at my apartment. I didn't answer the door the first few times, but eventually I did. We sat on my balcony surrounded by the flowers I'd planted. She looked different, simpler. She wore jeans and a regular sweater, no designer labels visible. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She looked more like the girl I'd raised. "I'm in therapy," she told me, trying to figure out why I did what I did. Why I was so desperate to fit into Preston's world that I abandoned my own. I nodded but didn't say anything. "I got a new job," she continued. "Left the advertising agency. I'm working for a non-profit now. It pays less, but it feels more meaningful, more like the values you tried to teach me." "That's good," I said quietly. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I know trust is earned, not given. But I want to try. If you'll let me." I looked at her, really looked at her, trying to see if this was real or just another performance. I didn't know yet. Maybe I wouldn't know for a long time. "I'm not ready to go back to how things were," I told her honestly. "I don't know if I ever will be. You hurt me, Amber. Deeply. I know. But I'm willing to have coffee with you once a month. No promises beyond that. We'll see where it goes." Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. That's more than I deserve." Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. I was still figuring that out. As I sit here now on my balcony, watching the sun set over Baltimore, I think about everything I've learned, about love and sacrifice and boundaries, about the difference between being kind and being a doormat, about how sometimes the people we give everything to can't see our value until they lose us. I learned that love doesn't guarantee loyalty, that sacrifice doesn't guarantee gratitude, but that doesn't mean we should stop loving or sacrificing for the people we care about. It just means we need to love ourselves too, protect ourselves, set boundaries. The pain Amber caused me was real, deep, life-changing, but so was the joy of raising her for 22 years, watching her grow, learn, become a person. Even if that person hurt me, those years still mattered. They shaped me, taught me about myself. I'm not bitter anymore. Bitterness takes too much energy, and I need that energy for my own life now. I'm not even angry. Mostly, I'm just sad. Sad for what we lost. Sad for the years we might never get back, but I'm also free. Free from the constant worry about whether I was good enough, whether I'd done enough, whether she appreciated me. I don't need her appreciation anymore. I appreciate myself. And maybe someday, if Amber really does change, if she really does understand what she did and become someone different, we'll rebuild our relationship. It won't be the same. It can't be. Too much has happened. But maybe it could be something new, something healthier, built on mutual respect instead of one-sided sacrifice. Or maybe we won't. Maybe we'll have coffee once a month for a few years and then drift apart completely. Maybe she'll fall back into old patterns and I'll have to walk away again. I don't know what will happen, And for the first time in 22 years, I'm okay with not knowing, because I've learned that hope isn't about expecting people to change. It's not about believing everything will work out perfectly. Hope is about believing that I can heal even when people hurt me, that I can build a good life even when I'm alone, that my worth doesn't depend on whether my daughter loves me back. They say that sometimes the people we love the most can hurt us the deepest. That's true. I know that now. But they also say that in letting go of that pain, we find our truest selves. I'm still learning which parts of my heart to close and which ones to keep open. Because hope, I've realized, isn't about expecting people to change. It's about believing that we can heal even when they don't. I look at the flowers on my balcony. Some of them didn't make it through the season, but others thrived, bloomed in colors I didn't expect, filled my small space with beauty I didn't know I needed. Maybe that's the lesson. Not everything survives. Not every relationship can be saved. But that doesn't mean we stop planting, stop trying, stop hoping. We just learn to hope for different things, better things. And most importantly, we learn to hope for ourselves. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved because loving them was destroying you? Have you ever had to choose between being kind and protecting yourself? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to put yourself first sometimes. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope wherever you are, whatever you're going through, you remember your worth, because you matter. You always have. Take care of yourself.